mentioning TypeScript, I really like it. That's why I picked this type translations. I actually shortened the title. Original title is internationalization using Angular, TypeScript, and lazy loading, because it's basically it's basically what I'm talking about. I will be showing you the setup of the translations without any library, without the Angular I18N itself, because it's a bit tricky and nobody really uses that. It should change in next Angular, but it isn't really available yet. So we'll see, and I'll talk about my setup. What are the common solutions currently, in Angular for translations? Do you know any? Do you use any? Do you do translations? Yeah, NGX Translate. So you like NGX Translate, probably. Yeah, everybody likes NGX Translate. Again? I didn't understand.
It's
Yeah, yeah, but what's really to deprecate there? It's the NGX Translate itself. It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple library. If you use that, it's good. Why not? There is also something that should be maintained, that it is maintained, and it will replace it. So NGX Translate, one thing. The other thing is Angular itself. It has something baked in. So what's the difference? One is third-party solution that's widely used, that can be lazy loaded. It is actually advised that you lazy load these translations using JSON. And it uses a pipe and translation keys. These keys are basically string, and the pipe is impure. So that's the thing that you will actually use. And it can be improved by typings, but usually people don't do that. So you end up with a lot of errors, a lot of unmaintainable code, because they're keys are just strings, and you don't really know where they point, and you find out where it doesn't work in production. So that's not really good. Angular, it has integrated solution that is not really used. People don't like it because it's a bit clumsy. It should change, but we'll see. And the thing that is currently done, it's that application is built for each locale, for each translation. You have to build application multiple times. So that's not really good right now. And it also uses template attributes and translation IDs. So it's a bit unclear how the translation are connected together, managed. It can be a bit frustrating when something breaks. So what's the other solution? There is a transloco, something really recent. They really improved the NGX Translate, and it's basically a nice library that you might also have a look on. But I'm not talking about these three. I will be talking about something completely different. It will be using just the Angular code to do your translations. So how will I do it? What can be improved on how you currently handle translations in your projects? You need a way to check that all translations are correct. What does it mean? That every file, for example, implements some schema, some interface, that you know that the Chinese or Czech translation is the same translation or as English or, I don't know, German. Because when it's not, then it's probably not working 100% in production. I mean, there is an error, there is a missing key, or there is, I don't know, something that we will probably find out when it breaks. What's the other thing? We need also a way to check that all the keys that we use in our templates are actually valid, that we don't do a typo, because typos are pretty common, in strings even more. because it's not checked, it will not tell you that something like this doesn't exist, and you have to know that. So it actually doesn't complement to your Zen, because you have to remember all the translations. And how can you remember translations when you remember the shortcuts? So you cannot do that. Both. So TypeScript already knows a lot of stuff, and we can use TypeScript and dependency injection to provide the way how to import the translations and lazy load them. And I will show you how. So we will create a translation file. Can you actually read it? No. Probably not. Sorry, I don't have the lighter picture, but I will try to explain what's there, because it's important, but not so much. So so I will explain. Export const. There is some constant. It's just an object that has a keys. This is key, language, English. There is another key, home. There's an object, title and description, and title and description. So that's it. Nothing too serious. There is also a lang supported property, and that property is actually a function. You cannot really see that, but it is a function that takes one parameter. It's n number, and it has a template literal that will tell you this demo supports n languages, and it will actually differentiate if n is singular or plural, and put an s there. So this is a simple way to do the plural, and it will actually, you can actually do it like this with a simple function. Or if it's more complicated, like you are in languages where, like not in English, but for example in Czech language or in German language, it's a bit more complicated. Sometimes you need something more intelligent, and what's the simplest way you can do? You can actually use libraries that support plurals and that support these things, and just use a call. Like you would just call that library in this function. So that's it, and it will determine the plural itself. You don't need to do it manually like this. But this is a simple demo, so we can do it for like one thing for one S. So just to have an insight. And the other thing that you can see, if this disappears, yeah, fuck, sorry. It needs to be beeped. So there is a export type translation and sorry? Yeah, equals type of English translation. English translation is the name of the object that holds the English translation, and we will basically infer a type of that object to that type. So we will have a type of this translation, and we will tell that this is a default. This is what every other translation needs to implement. Why? Because we are developing in English, so we know that English will work, and when English works, then every other translation will also work, because it implements this type. So we are safe. What's next? There is a component, probably more readable, but I will still say it. Template, pretty easy. What you'll do, you'll just have an interpolation and access some object, and that some object, it can be actually see there in constructor. You will just inject a translation. You will call it lang, for example, whatever. You will have a typing for it. This typing is actually our default, so we know that every translation has to be of type of this or something more, so it will work. And we can either use it directly in a component because it's a pure object, so we can use it as an object in template, or we can console log it, anything. It's there, it's provided by dependency injection. It's not asynchronous, it's provided and lazy loaded to the component. Component can right away use it, so it's that simple in a component. What's more to like? There is auto-completion in IDEs, in WebStorm, in VS Code. It looks like this. You can probably, again, see it not pretty clearly, but if you have a lang, as the language object, then you can see that there is a property language, there is a property home, there is a property info, there is a property length supported. Language is a string, home is a object title string, info is an object title string. Length supported is a function that takes n as a number and returns a string. Pretty easy, pretty readable. You know what's happening, you know what to use in a template or anywhere else. Same for VS Code. VS Code also fully supports this. It's simple auto completion upon objects. So that's it. What's other IDE support? You can hover this is only in Web Storm, I think, but you can hover on the properties in template. Again, it's not that readable, but I will share the slides so you can have a look. And when you hover on lang.language, you will see the whole type of that language. So you will see what's the type of this property that you have in template, and you know what to use. Similar thing is in where you make a mistake. Let's say you will use a wrong key. There's wrong key, and it will actually tell you that the T key doesn't support, and that the interface looks like this. So you have to choose from something that is actually in that object. Best thing about this is that this is done also or mainly in build time. What does it mean? Build time? It means that you will never see something like this, section.title. Have you already seen that in a project? You are missing key? Yeah, I think everybody has seen it. This is one of the most common problems in production with translated products, that somebody refactors something, or let's say, nobody uses this text in a footer, let's delete it. But it probably is used somewhere. And for example, people tend to not refactor the translations, so it seems that it is not in a footer, but somebody is using that, I don't know, in profile page, for example. So the text disappears and your section is without a title. So that's unfortunate. This is my favorite. This is my favorite picture from Monkey User. It tells you basically what are the consequences. This is the compiler, and it will tell you that you are too drunk to drive, so you cannot drive. But if it's a runtime error, you just die in a lake, because like why not? So my favorite picture, yeah. TypeScript is great. It will tell you in runtime, in build time, that your product is not ready to be shipped. These are some examples of an error. Again, you cannot see the error, but you can imagine that they are pretty horrible. No, they are not. They are actually telling you that, for example, the first one is telling you there is the cs.translation.ts, there is a line number and the column, and it will tell you that title string is not assignable to title string, subtitle string. So property subtitle is missing in that type. So it will basically tell you, hey, you forgot to implement this translation in your Czech version of a site. That's pretty neat. Also, for something else where you actually use the wrong key somewhere in template, it will tell you that in site component at line 44, the property wrong key doesn't exist on type and whole type that you are actually accessing. So it will tell you, you are accessing something that is not there, you probably mess up. And you will not ship to production because your build will fail. And this happens regularly during the refactors. So what are the pros here? Because there is obviously a lot of them, no missing and untranslated keys as part of the application. There is a quick way to validate that multiple translation files are actually compatible and working together. Because if you want to create another translation, you just copy the default one and translate everything. If you want to merge it, it's just a TypeScript or JavaScript object. It is pretty easy to merge these objects because they are mergeable. So that's it. It is type safe, so whole translation is type safe. We've seen that. The compiler will always yell at you that you are doing something wrong, something that is not in order, so we will know that. whole thing is lazy loaded. I will show you how, because as a part of the setup, it can be pretty easily lazy loaded. If you don't want it lazy loaded, you can like not have it lazy loaded and just use it without it. Even with a Ampere pipe like asynchronous subscribe, you can put these translations into state management. For example, we do that at some projects, so we can talk about later. It is instant. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That you are basically having translation at the time that you are building your application, and it is baked into your application. Each version, it is instant. And when you switch the language version, only the new language version is actually lazy loaded, and the application will re-render instantly. So that's nice. Nothing needs to be dynamically loaded, but still it can be pretty easily. There is no need for in template impure pipe. If you want them, you can use them if you have it in state management, for example, but there is no need for them because you can access the plain object. And the translation itself, it can be inherited from the default translation. So you don't have to type it manually. You don't have to do the manual typing of the whole interface. You just do the type of something and it will just work. And also for the CEO, like for the crawlers and probably also for some users, you can see that at huge applications that they do that. The roots are prefixed by the root language abbreviation. So that's nice. You can see that the root is actually /n/ rest of the root /de/ rest of the root /cs/ rest of the root. So you can see what language version are you currently at. You can actually include in the Angular index all the language versions of that site. So then crawler knows that this site, this blog post, this something is available in multiple language versions, and it optimizes that index for it. And the root can be pretty easily localized entirely. How? You can use the constants for roots. These constants, because the translation file itself is a constant, can be taken from the translation. So you can basically translate all your roots. If you want your roots in German for German site and in English for English site, you can translate the roots. It will work. And as I said when I was showing you, translations can be string, function, string literals, any other custom format. You can like do whatever you want, and you will just call the proper formatter in the function. It is pretty easily to include it. So there was a lot of pros. There has to be some cons. Yeah, there are. Lazy loading. It's a requirement for this setup with the abbreviations, with the lazy loading I was showing you. If you don't care about the lazy loading, if you are creating, for example, mobile application that is wrapped in Ionic and shipped to the store with everything it has, you don't have to care about lazy loading, so you like don't need to use it. But if you are creating an optimized website that has a pretty small size print, then probably it's a good requirement that you need to lazy load your application. Most of us already do, I think, or not? Yeah, probably. So the other con is that if you want to load them dynamically from server, it requires few extra steps. This also, like you would need to do the same steps in any other setup, so it's not really a big problem. But in this case, if you still want to keep the build time, so let compiler tell you that you are wrong, then you need to provide them with these build time translations. So what we actually do in our applications, where we have this in production, that we regularly update the translations that are in a repo and commit it with the project. So we actually have a script that will download the translation from the server because it is in CMS or somewhere, and put it into a project. So every time we release, we know that there is a fallback of a default that should work, that will always work, and later on, when we actually load the application, we are just patching this default object with what we loaded from server, because maybe some editor found a typo in the translation, so he fixed it. Maybe. So we basically patch it. And with this, we have a really nice setup that is built safe and also fetches it from server. So there's a demo time. I have demo prepared. It was originally just a GIF, or GIF, as I like to say, but it wouldn't be visible. So this is probably somehow visible. This is just a simple demo with some links. It will tell you that home works and that this demo supports 2 languages. That was our translation, actually. And we can see all the scripts that are fetched for this demo in a network tab. And there is something interesting. There is this is the state what will happen if we just load the application. So the main is here, the whole application that it's needed for this is here. The preloading is turned off, so anything that is not needed is not loaded. But there is a site English module.js. What does it do? Because English is default and we are seeing this web in English, we can actually see that it contains the English translation. And it also may contain all the other files or localization things related to a translation or whole localization. So, for example, if we would use moment, if you use moment.js, or I don't know, date functions, then the local would be actually included in this module. It would be fetched with this module. You would have it as a default because it's in English. That's the default that was loaded. If we change a language for Czech one, we can just click there. We see that it instantly changed. Whole demo is now in Czech language, and we'll see that this appeared. It's site CS module.js. What does it hold? It just holds a Czech translation with basically all the other Czech things that are required for the Angular, but not much of them because it's a simple demo. But if it would be a complicated one, and if we would use a moment for dates or something, there would probably be a lot more in that module. But we see that we need the Czech one only when we actually visit the Czech version, so it is lazy loaded with that. If we by default visit the Czech one, then we'll probably see only the Czech one, no English. Nice. So we see only the things that we need. Lazy loaded application with really small size footprint. Do you have any questions? Because I think my other slide is just this is skipped. It's just Q&A. And if we wait, there is a link. And if you are interested, please visit this link because I've written a whole blog post. It's on Angular in depth, so you can read a lot more about it and see the whole setup. There is a GitHub repo of that project that you just saw. It is pretty easy to replicate, and please do. So don't be shy. Even if you do this setup in your project and you later on decide that this is not for me, I will probably do it somehow differently. Going from the TypeScript object to the JSON is pretty easy. VS Code extension can probably do that. You already have a typing, so you can use the typing for the NGX translate or for transloco when they will support it, and it's a win-win situation. You cannot lose with just a little bit of setup. So you basically refactor all your JSONs to TypeScript files and do a few lines of code in your modules. That's it, and you will have build time checks in translations. Thank you.